When you have a cold, you probably quickly reach for that decongestant. Well, an FDA advisory committee says they actually don't work.
Yeah, this is big news to a lot of people. So what do you do now, right? Well, we have our medical expert with us this morning to give us a little bit of advice, getting you the right stuff. Dr. Payal Kohli with us. Thanks, Dr. Kohli, for being here.
Good morning.
Okay, let's start. Let's start at the beginning. Like, what do you, I feel like we've been fed this information for so long. What do we do now?
This decongestant has been around for decades, since the 1970s,
Right.
in fact. But even in the 1990s, a lot of physicians were raising concerns about its efficacy in this particular pill form. But what ended up happening is that early 2000s, there was the meth crisis. So people were using the other decongestant, pseudoephedrine, and making illegal meth. So that really got put behind the shelves, and this started taking a front seat, even though the efficacy of phenylephrine, this particular decongestant, was in question.
So the stuff that's behind the counter, that works.
Okay.
The
That
other
works
stuff, not so, which is so interesting because they make billions of dollars off of these drugs that we have found out don't work.
Don't work. So the medicine works. It's called phenylephrine. It works to constrict your blood vessels so that they're less leaky. That's how it decongests you. The problem is when you take it in a pill form, most of it gets metabolized in the stomach. So the amount that actually makes it to your bloodstream is very little, and the amount that gets to your nose, which is where you're congested, is even less.
So what's your best recommendation of how we should take it?
Yeah, so nasal spray is still thought to work.
Okay.
Obviously, in the intensive care unit in the hospital, we use it intravenously,
Right.
where it also works to squeeze the blood vessels. But the problem is with how much of it is actually making it to the nose. And there are other options as well if you have a cold or allergies.
This is so wild to so many people. Now everybody's going and checking their cabinets, right, to make sure what they have. What kind of brands, what kind of medicine should we be looking for to make sure that it's effective?
So many of these cold medicines are combination medicines. In other words, they have Benadryl in it, they have a cough suppressant, they have phenylephrine as the decongestant. So I would just flip the bottle over, regardless of the brand, because there's so many different brands and combinations, and look and see if it has phenylephrine. Personally, I'm not wasting my money on it. Now, the antihistamine will still work. The pseudoephedrine behind the counter will still work. You can still get nasal sprays, not just the phenylephrine nasal spray, but the Afrin. That works to decongest as well. You can use nasal saline as well, just like rinses to get all those chemicals out, which causes the inflammation. So there are lots of other options that still work, but if it says phenylephrine in it, I don't think you should bother with it.
So it sounds like there's bits and pieces of it that kind of work, but if you want the real deal, you got to get the stuff behind the counter.
Behind the counter. And they do take your driver's license for that because they're tracking kind of how much of it you're getting. And the FDA has a sort of a tough task ahead of them, because what's going to happen now is they're going to look at this panel's recommendations and say, okay, should we give the drug manufacturers a little time to swap out the ingredients that work? Should we give them time to change these formulations, or should we just pull it? So still think they're going to be on our shelves for the next several months, possibly even years, with the way things move. But it really behooves us, I think, to take control of what we're buying and spending our money on.
The onus right now is really on the consumer themselves. So make sure you're telling your friends at home and spreading that far and wide to your family.
That's what I was saying. That's why you have to watch the news. We're helping you save money and get the right stuff. This is such an interesting topic. When we first heard about it, we're like, I think it's $6 billion that people spend on these meds that don't work for years. Like, that blows your mind.
And just last year, the Academy of Allergy actually wrote a citizens petition to try to get this pulled from the market. But it really takes a story like this where the FDA puts their nickel down for, I think, change to start to happen.
Just really quickly, because we only have a few seconds left, how long can we expect the FDA to take on this process now?
I think it'll take a while. Okay. It'll take months, if not years, because this is a big process. They want to hear what the citizens have to say. So if you feel strongly about this, write in to the FDA, because your voice really does matter when it comes to what ends up happening. But at least for now, make sure you're being choosy, because all that nice packaging on the front is very seductive. NyQuil, DayQuil, all of those things that I used to reach for, but what you're putting in there is just about as good as a placebo or sugar pill.
Yeah, so
you have the power.
Phenylephrine. Look at Dr. Kohli, not just educating us, but helping you advocate for yourself. Dr. Kohli, thank you for being with us.